Well, welcome everyone. It's a privilege to have amongst us our guest speaker, Professor Swaran Preet Singh. Dr. Singh initially trained as a surgeon in New Delhi and subsequently changed his trajectory of medical career into mental health care and psychiatry after he witnessed the impact of ethnic conflict related trauma on children and youth. Um, he trained as a psychiatrist subsequently at the Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research in Chandigarh, Punjab, before relocating to UK in 1991 in London, England. Since then, he has worked closely with involved in establishment of first episode Psychosis program in London, England, at the National Health NHS, and subsequently went on to work at the Warwick University, I believe in 2006, where he has been, he led a variety of programs, including the first episode Psychosis program, but he was also the director of the Interdisciplinary Center for Mental Health and Wellbeing Research, as well as an NHS Consultant Psychiatrist with the Coventry and Warwickshire Partnership Trust. He has done a lot of work in the field of first episode psychosis, mental health of youth, as well as the transition between youth into adult age, as well as ethnic and cultural mental health areas. He's published widely, and he's also the founder member of the International Association of Youth Mental Health. His work has been acclaimed internationally. He has been as also spoken at various CPD events, as well as programs across UK, in Canada, in USA, as well as in Australia and India, on topics of global mental health law, medical education, and transition of mental health from, as I said, from adult care to from childhood to youth into adult mental health care. However, he is an aside from being an academic in psychiatry and a spoken individual in that area, I got first introduced to his work actually in his literature proliferation around essays that he started writing on Substack, and some of the beautiful photography that he has published on Substack. And it was a pleasure to read many of those essays and his views about life, about how his life has been shaped and influenced. And as you mentioned, your daughter is here, how your children have also influenced and shaped, and how your cultural upbringing in India, how that has been shaped by, your earlier trajectory. So I'm going to hand over the reins to you. Today, you're going to be talking on the topic that you've already displayed on the screen over here, which is mind, brain, and self, ancient wisdom, modern evidence. And we look forward to your lovely presentation. Please join me in welcoming Professor Swaran Preet Singh with virtual applause. And Sat Shri Akal, and welcome to the virtual podium, Professor Saab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veena ji, for that very generous introduction. I do not consider myself an expert in either Sikhism or spirituality. These are just personal observations and self-taught lessons, some which life has forced upon me, some which I have chosen to learn. I'm going to focus mainly on Sikhism, but I will keep it broader than that. So what I'm going to do is start with personal experiences, and this is some of it is not easy listening. but it's important because it's my story and I'd like to share it with you. Uh, and then I'm going to talk about the fundamental, and although these are stereotypes have a grain of truth in them. That's why they work. Uh, about the main differences in the Eastern and Western tradition of thinking about God, about self, and in our profession about the psyche. And then I'll move on to the Sikh traditions and compare and contrast them with the other Indian traditions. I'll summarize, it's a talk in itself, the emerging neuroscience of contemplative practice. It should be not religious, it should be contemplative practice. I don't have time to go through that. It's a hugely interesting field. And then finally, I'm going to say, what does it mean for mental health generally for us who are clinicians, but also for us who are trying to live a good life or help our children flourish or help our societies and communities flourish. So that's the plan. Now, I was a trainee surgeon in a hospital called Safdarjung Hospital, which is across the road from All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And on 31st of October 1984, when I turned up at the ward clerk, who's normally, you know how India is, they are very deferential and obsequious. He swore at me. For those of you who speak Hindi, he said, "Tum haramzado ne kar diya." I was really taken aback because you don't expect a clerk to speak to you like this. So I turned to the nurse and said, "Did you hear that?" And she said, "Haven't you heard?" And she said, "Mrs. Gandhi has been shot by her two Sikh bodyguards, and her body is she's in All India Institute of Medical Sciences." It was a genuine shock for the whole country. 84 had seen Blue Star, the attack on Golden Temple and Akal Takht. And so I was aware of what was going on, but I was basically a non-believer. And that's me here. And I used to call myself a devout atheist. My father was very religious, and I think it was a kind of rebellion against my dad that I kind of chose the path of science and rationality, assuming that these were opposed to religion and spirituality. By 1 o'clock, there was, it's very hard to describe the atmosphere, and I don't think it's particularly relevant here, but a friend of mine told me to leave. He said the atmosphere is getting ugly, and I couldn't get out of the gate because there was a mass of people blocking the throng of people. And I had a scooter, a Vespa, those of you know Indian scooters, and I had to get through the throng. And then somebody swore at me, and then I felt a punch on the back of my head. And my turban, your first instinct, your turban comes off, so I clutched onto my turban, and I squeezed through the crowd. Now that at that time, people were sobbing and howling, and what happened at that moment to me, I don't think it was any planned assault. It was just I was the public face of what the country was feeling. There is a book by a British journalist called Pav Singh called India's Guilty Secret. So it seems that I was the first Sikh to be assaulted, but I can't be sure. But I wasn't badly hurt. That night, there was a pogrom of killings. Crowds of men were given money, booze, and weapons and allowed to maraud through North India, mainly Delhi, Kanpur, and some other bits. Now, figures vary. The government figure is 3,200. People embellish it to 50,000. Our own study thinks that between 8 and 10,000 Sikhs were killed. These were basically adult men. They were pulled out of their houses and they would break their legs and then pour petrol on them, petrol or kerosene on them. There were lots of killings on buses and trains. And for 3 days, we were hunted. Now, I was lucky. We lived in a part of Delhi called Rajouri Garden, which was at that time half Sikh and half what was called Jan Sangh, the precursor of Bharatiya Janata Party. Can I just check? Can you hear me or am I speaking too softly? Can you hear me? Yeah. And
Yes.
so our two communities got together and said, we are going to defend this area. So I remember for three nights, we could see fires burning all around. And on the television, there was this constant replay of the same thing, crowd walking around Mrs. Gandhi's body, shouting, "Khoon ka badla khoon." We seek blood for blood. Most of the killings were led by, if you, let me see if I can get this here, laser pointer. You see this man over here? He's a local Congress leader. So he's leading the men, and there you see the cops walking past. The police were given strict instructions not to interfere. In fact, in our area, the Sikh came to announce with a loudspeaker that don't drink water. The Sikhs have poisoned the water. And I challenged one of them. I said, "What do you think? Water knows which house is Sikh and which house is non-Sikh? I mean, what nonsense?" And he threatened to beat me up, so I stepped back. I later took part in this inquiry called by People's Union for Democratic Rights, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So in two parts of Delhi, entire streets were wiped out. Men were wiped out, and these were not Sikhs from Punjab. They are Rajasthani Sikhs. They are Sikhs, but they speak Hindi. And they are, sadly, even now in Sikhism, they are considered lower caste. So these widows were all put together in these high-rise apartments, and the area is called Tilak Vihar, but it's still known as Widows Colony. Here you can see a woman holding what's left of her son's scalp. Many of the men cut their hair hurriedly to avoid being targeted. But what you were left with widows in perpetual grief and a whole lot of under 12, 13-year-olds with no one to look after them. I don't want to describe the kind of things I saw, but they haven't left me. I'm not saying I'm traumatized or I've got PTSD or something, but it was very strange feeling hunted in your own country. We were hunted. In October 2014, BBC asked me to go back. I'd written about one boy, Harjinder. And if you have time, I'll tell you his story later. BBC asked me if I'd go and look for him. And this is Bobby Friction. He is the biggest music star in England. He runs a very famous BBC radio station. And Bobby was 3 years old, and he was visiting Delhi at that time as a toddler. And Bobby and I went together. And this is the spot where we are standing, is the spot where I was hit on the back of my head. We went to the area, and surprised, to my eternal surprise, see how different I look from here. Some of those boys who were now men in their 40s recognized me, and these were some of those who used to come to our school. I used to run a school and a clinic. They wouldn't come. This was just an attempt. My worry at that time was that there's the Punjab militancy going on. I felt like picking up a gun and killing someone. It was absolute rage at what had happened. I thought these kids will grow up as cannon fodder for the militancy movement. Many of them did. Let's give them some structure. So we started a play area at a school, and then they wouldn't come because they were suspicious. So I started offering free clinical care to them. And one of them, I said, "How do you remember me?" And he said, "I remember you because you reminded us that we've not been forgotten." This program of our visit to that area is still available on BBC. If you just put this title on BBC Google, "Assassination When Delhi Burned, Swaran Singh," it's a 26-minute program, and I think it's well worth well worth listening to. So I decided that, well, there was one boy, Harjinder used to every few days climb onto the top of that apartment block and threaten to jump unless the people who had killed his father and brother were caught, because he could see the killers. The killers were free to roam around. It was complete impunity. And I would have to crawl up, and he would listen to me and eventually calm him down and bring him down. And when he calmed down a little, he broke out in urticaria. He broke out in hives. And I got very intrigued. In medical training, I had not particularly paid attention to psychiatry. How does his anguish turn into a blister? You know, is it his skin that is in anguish? So that's how I decided to become a psychiatrist and join PGI. And in Punjab at that time, there was this pattern of the you know the police would kill a couple of people they would call terrorists. Then the terrorists would kill some people in the police. The police will then attack a village and kill a whole family. So over here you see a chart where the killings follow each other. It was a horrible time. And I did a lot of work on police atrocities and working with the terrorist movement, but it was very dangerous. Uh, I was warned by everyone, including people involved in the militancy, that I should stop doing that. The other thing that the police were doing were that they would arrest a young person, a young Sikh, and then say, "Oh, we were taking him to the court, and he asked to rest to go to pass urine, and then he tried to run, and we had to shoot him." And the boys knew in advance. I eventually ended up speaking to them in a prison because that was safer. And they would know. One of them, they would say, "Well, tell my family I'll be killed next week and it'll be called an encounter." It was extraordinary. A whole generation was wiped out with complete impunity. I was then collecting evidence for what was then called the Ranganath Mishra Commission, which was to look at who was responsible. Everyone knew who was responsible. And we had listed and we had got evidence. But around the same time, at the very spot, maybe 100, not even 100, maybe 20 meters from there, a young man called Rajiv Goswami set himself on fire. There was an Indian report called the Mandal Commission report. India has reserved seats for lower castes, what are called OBCs, backward castes. And at that time, 25% of all seats on all jobs were reserved for this group. And Mandal Commission recommended that this be increased to 49%. Rajiv Goswami, a Brahmin boy, set himself on fire in protest. And that started an epidemic of suicide among young people. 150 young people tried to harm themselves, some in secret, many just doing what Rajiv had done, set themselves on fire. I managed to interview 22 of them who were in Chandigarh, who had done that in Chandigarh, of whom 6 or 8 died. I forget. This is one of my earliest research papers. I didn't know how to do research then. So when I look back at it now, it's rather naive. But it's the first ever study of self-immolation as a form of political protest. None of the 22 had a serious mental illness. So what I see in the West, a slightest form of self-harm is immediately considered a manifestation of mental illness. We have forgotten Durkheim's original idea of what causes suicide. These people had enemy, sense of injustice. They were upper castes but poor, and they would see lower caste but rich boys get ahead of them. It was again part of my building sense that India was profoundly unjust. And at that time, I also started working at Mother Teresa's home in Chandigarh. And I saw there the value of serving. 8 nurses looked after between 250 to 300 orphans or abandoned people. And they provided better care than any private hospital in India could at that time. Ranganath Mishra Commission report came out and said nobody was responsible for the riots. 2 of the cases that I was personally involved in, one was where a woman said that the man who killed my father, killed her husband, she had recognized him because he was a local milkman. And Justice Mishra says in his summing up of the evidence that it is quite possible that she is trying to frame this guy to avoid paying her milk bill. Another woman who had 2 young daughters, they lived in Palampur, which now it's a very developed area, but that time it was a farmland and forest. The crowd was approaching the house. The husband said to the wife, "Run with the girls." One of the things that Sikhs haven't spoken about and nobody talks about is the number of sexual assaults that took place in those, and I have direct evidence of that. So he said, "Run with the girls." So she said, I saw who it was. It's this local guy, but I ran I took my girls. And Justice Mishra says, how can you believe the word of a woman who leaves her husband like that? Right? That was the final straw for me. I said, I'm going to leave India. I'm never going to come back. I had no family abroad. My family were already worried about my safety and what I was doing. So I decided to leave. And I remember having a drink with some friends, and I had applied for a job with United Nations because Mozambique and Ethiopia had a massive famine at that time. 1 million people had died. So I was going to work as a general doctor in famine relief with United Nations. And I had a job in Ethiopia, and I had a bungalow and a cook and a driver, and I was given basic training on cleaning wells and water sanitation. And I was sitting with some friends, and I said I was going to Ethiopia in 2 weeks, and I've got this letter from Nottingham giving me a job. And I don't know whether it was my friend's lack of knowledge of geography or the amount of alcohol he had consumed. He said, yeah, Nottingham is on the way to Ethiopia. Why don't you stop over in Nottingham and then see how you feel, and then you can go to Ethiopia, which is what I did. I went to England, and I said, I'll stay for 6 months, and then I'll go to Ethiopia. And 6 months became 6 years, and I never left. In fact, I went to Ethiopia last year to complete a project, and it's how life changes. One small step in out of the way, and you end up very different from your goal. So by this time, I absolutely hated India. I said I want nothing to do with it, and I also hated organized religion. So I came to Britain. And as luck would have it, the former Yugoslavia broke up. And I met someone who was starting a charity in Bosnia. I started working with him because Mother Teresa's work had shown me the power of internal happiness that comes from doing charity. So I worked in a charity for Bosnia for over 13 years, and we saw horrors which made 1984 look like a kindergarten fight. And that made me realize that India was not uniquely barbaric. Mark Twain once said that the greatest joke is that the white person thinks that he's not barbaric, others are more savage. Bosnia was absolutely atrocious. And this is from Gurbani, Hum nahi change, bura nahi koi. I'm not good, no one else is bad. You always think of the savage as the other, but there is a savage in all of us. And it takes very little to reveal it. So this made me see India slightly differently. For me, the West was this fancy place with learned and educated, scientific, rational people. And we were backward, superstitious, religious. And Yugoslavia completely changed my mind about Europe and what Europe was like. But I carried on believing in the scientific, rational model of the world. And if I had to summarize it in one phrase, it would be that famous phrase you've heard, cogito ergo sum. I don't know how many of you know the origin of this. Descartes was trying to counter Kant, Immanuel Kant, and the debate was, what is the nature of reality? Descartes started thinking, is reality that can be known by your senses or not? So I've got this cup in my hand. How do I know it's a cup? I can see it. If I was blind, would the cup exist? Yes, I could feel it. If I lost my sensation of touch, would the cup exist? I could taste it. But if I had lost all 5 senses, would the cup exist for me? And if I took a drug like LSD, I might see cups which don't exist. So Descartes started thinking, what if what I see as external reality is a demon playing, he called it a demon playing tricks with my mind. What can I know? So he said, I can doubt this, I can doubt. And he came to the conclusion that the fact that he was doubting, he could not doubt. He could not reduce that to anything underneath. So he said, I exist. And the proof of that is that I'm doubting. Cogito. And he said the universe, reality is made up of 2 things. Res extensa, the external world which we experience, and res cogitans, the thinking thing that's in us. And from that comes the mind, body, spirit. And this doubt, being skeptical, being objective, not trusting your senses, controlling for confounders, this is the basis of all science. And this is supposed to be the great achievement of enlightenment, removing subjectivity, removing belief from how we know reality. We know reality by predicting under strict conditions from which objectivity has been removed. And science has been extraordinary. I mean, when John Snow discovered cholera in London 250 years ago, the average lifespan in London male was 27, 28 years. My grandfather had 2 wives and 16 children, 13 of whom died. So science has been extraordinary. We've landed probes in Mars, and India has landed a satellite not a satellite, a probe on the dark side of the moon. So science, you can't doubt science, and I'm still a great admirer of science. But as I started reading, I realized that this method of doubt that Descartes is credited, that Descartes gets the credit from, it comes from the Upanishads. It was written first by Adi Shankaracharya. That Adi Shankaracharya's date is disputed. Some say 4th century AD, some say 8th century AD, some say 5th century BC. But he writes this treatise, Neti Neti. Neti Neti means not this, not this. So the Neti Neti method of knowing reality is, what is reality? Is it this? No, it's not this. Is it this? It's not this. But here, the concept of reality is not the external world. The reality is what's going on in my head. So I'm feeling something. Am I my feeling? No, I'm not my feeling. Am I my thoughts? No, I'm not my thoughts. My knee hurts. Am I my pain? No, I'm not my pain. Not this. No, it's the same idea. Doubting. But here, they are trying to understand what is the internal reality. And the internal reality is a silent witness that observes everything, but is not participant. And that is called Sakshi Bhav. And you understand Sakshi Bhav only through Dhyan. My view that Indian religions were based on belief and superstition was completely wrong. The entire Upanishad view is experiential. There is not a single dogmatic statement. There are no 10 commandments in any of the Indian religions. There are suggestions, experience for yourself. There are, for instance, Guru Gobind Singh said, don't cut your hair. But that was not Guru Nanak's Sikhism. That is a much later creation of the Khalsa. Our Eastern tradition, including the Chinese and Japanese traditions, are experiential. They are not belief-based. What about psyche? So Freud, in one of his early lectures, says that the ego's relation to the id might be compared to that of a rider to his horse. So the ego is being driven by instinctual drives, sensual pleasures, and social controls, do's and don'ts. And the job of the ego is to keep the horses steady and the chariot steady. Now, Freud was a very learned man. He should have attributed this to Socrates in the 4th century BC, in the dialogue with Phaedrus. Phaedrus and Socrates are talking about what is the nature of the soul. And Socrates says the soul is like a rider with two horses, a noble horse who is white and an evil horse which is black. And they pull in different directions. And Phaedrus, be careful. We call it now, I don't know whether to listen to my heart or my head. So again, this is the basis of what I thought was the great Western breakthrough in the understanding of the psyche. But 1,000 years before Socrates, Katha Upanishad describes the first chariot model of human beings. I haven't put the whole quote, but the horses are our senses and our desires are the paths on which the horses are going. The reins are mind, manas. The charioteer is buddhi, intelligence, from which comes the word Buddha. So you can immediately see here a big difference between Western and Eastern models. I'm right now writing a paper on this, but I don't know when I'll complete it. In psychiatry, we combine learning disability and mental illness together. This model says these are different. Disorders of intelligence are learning disabilities. Disorders of the mind are mental disorders. So here, and there are loads and loads of, I find more and more I read. But there is also another difference. The rider is the Atma. Now, in the Western model, ego is all there is. Everything ends with the ego. So individuation of the ego, Maslow says, is the greatest thing you can do. Be individual, be authentic, be true to yourself. Self is all that matters. While in the Eastern tradition, self is a problem. Ahankara, and I'll come back to that. So it's very profound and fundamental difference. And I find more and more that the Katha Upanishad model of the mind, you don't have to believe in the Atma, you don't have to believe in soul, you don't have to believe in God, and yet this model works better in therapy than the other model, and I'll come to that towards the end of this. What about God? Now, you can broadly divide the Abrahamic religions on one hand from the Eastern religions. Now, in the Abrahamic religions, there are three: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The logic is that there is a creation, so there must be a creator. The creator is the original individual and he sends his son or his prophet or his messenger with his word. And the son or prophet or messenger comes with the word of God. And that is the true word of God. Right? And each of those three religions believe that they are the chosen people. You can only go to heaven through Jesus. You can only go to Jannat through Muhammad. You are the chosen people. Why the world exists, you can have a religious view, or it's evolution, or you have kind of a creationistic view, but they are all tied around an understanding that God created the universe, human beings evolved by random chance or contingency, but we are here because of that. If you're religious, then you'll say, well, God speaks to you personally and you've got a personal relationship to God. This is very different from the Eastern concept of God. The biggest misunderstanding, I think, in the world, maybe I'm making it up, is the belief that Hinduism is polytheistic. Hinduism is the first monotheistic religion in the world. Hinduism says there is Brahman, and that is all there is. And the nature of reality is layered. There's mithya, which is falsehood. There is maya, which is the way, with the illusion of reality. There is vyavharika satta, which is empirical reality, behavioral reality. And then it's paramarthika satta, the ultimate reality. And one of the amazing things in the Rig Veda is something called Nasadya Sukta. And it says who made the creation and who made God. And it ends by saying, maybe even God doesn't know. So doubt is absolutely allowed in every aspect of Indian tradition. I find one analogy very powerful. If you think of creation and a creator as separate things, then you say, well, here's a painting. Where is the painter? There must be a painter, right? And that people who strongly argue for God say, well, there's a creation, so there must be a creator. It couldn't have appeared de novo. What if you're seeing a dance? If you're watching a dance, can you say, well, here's a dance and there's the dancer? You don't. The dance and dancer are the same thing. And that's why the Hindu concept of God is this, Nataraj. All of universe is a divine dance. And that's why Hindus worship everything, because everything is part of the cosmic divine. I say Hinduism is not the correct term. The word Hindu does not exist anywhere in Indian literature. It's called Sanatan. Hindu came from Arabs much later. It's a Sanatan belief that all of reality is a play, and the word is Leela. It's a Leela of God. Big Bang is predicted with his report is described as this dissolution of the universe, pralay. It's called pralay. I have a personal belief. I haven't written about it. I don't want to get shot by someone. I think Abrahamic religions came in opposition to Brahman, and that's why they are Abrahamic. But this is my it's not a play of word. It's the similarity is too striking. All across the Middle East, it was Sanatan that was the popular belief, including all the way down to Philippines. And I think Abraham is a term anti-Brahmin, but that's one of the shower thoughts you have. So you have four religions, which you could call dharmic religions. There is Sanatan, which there's disagreement on its date. Jainism, which came first before Buddhism, and is one of the most striking religions in the world because it is the only religion that actively denies the existence of God. Buddhism doesn't deny the existence of God. Buddha says it doesn't matter whether God exists or not. Mahavir Jain said God does not exist. Jainism did not spread because it had no patron king, and it's a very austere religion. Buddhism came 100 years later. But King Ashoka, one of the most powerful kings in India, adopted it and then spread his emissaries both the east and west. So Afghanistan was Buddhist. Large chunks of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Peshawar were Buddhist, as were all the way to China. Sikhism is the most recent of the dharmic religions. It is not the most religious recent religion because Zoroastrianism is only about 150 years old. And Sikhism, I don't need to tell you, came from the Bhakti movement, from Guru Nanak and the 10th subsequent gurus. So Sikhism has, and Nanak studied all of this, and Nanak has synthesized, Guru Nanak synthesized all of this, and then came up with a conclusions which are slightly different. So the rest of the Sikh contemplative tradition, I'm going to tell you where Sikhism is similar and where it's different. It's not massively different. Differences are subtle, but important, philosophically important. The reason, one of the things that's happened to Sikhism is that we've not been long enough to have had an intellectual discussion, which is sad. Buddhism spread, and Buddhism allowed for debate. In Hinduism, debate is paramount. Pandits sit across and argue. Sikhs have been persecuted and they've been uprooted all the time. They've never had to settle. They never had a chance to settle somewhere for centuries. Tamils have never been invaded. Tamil Nadu cannot be invaded. There is no land when you draw a line down from Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu has the oldest existing Indian tradition. They eat the same food that they ate 12,000 years ago. They have the oldest literary tradition because they've never had to fight. They've been settled. Sikhs have had to move. Punjabis have had to move all the time. And sadly, Sikhs have not allowed debate to flourish. There is a serious lack of disagreement in Sikhism, and that's a real tragedy because Guru Nanak went and argued with people and said, "Let's discuss, let's argue. You give me your view." His meeting with the saints. Anyway, it'll come back to me later. Okay. So if Sikhism is a part of, or it comes from Sanatan, then a very interesting question arises. Sanatan Dharam, Hinduism has 6 schools. The most prominent one is Advait, which is the one I described to you, that there is no creation-creator split. Advait means non-dual. Reality cannot, ultimate truth is just one, which is Brahman, which is consciousness. Quantum mechanics now also accepts that, well, some people accept that the underlying reality is consciousness. I think Sikhism best comes into what is called Vishisht Advait, which is qualified non-dualism. There is an underlying reality, and then there is Ishwar Rab, who's part of it. He is the creator, but he has created it's a subtle and very nuanced difference between Vishisht Advait and Advait. I haven't found a lot of literature, so this is my interpretation. My interpretation is that if Sikhism had to choose one of those 6 philosophies, it would be a variant of Advait. But one of you may correct me. Like I said, I'm not an expert. So Avval Allah Noor Paye Kudrat ke sab bande, Ek Noor to sab jag upja kaun bhale ko mande, which means that there is only one light, and everything is lit by the same light. Everything is illuminated by the same jyoti. So it's non-dual in that sense, but it has a creator God. So it's qualified non-dual. Then the other thing that's common is the concept of pran, breath. It comes from Latin spiritus, from which we get spirit, and pran is in Hinduism is very, very important, and in Buddhism and Jainism. Pran Adhar Jivan Dhan Meri, you are my breath and you are my life's support. Is a Sikh saying towards God. Interestingly, Sikhism has no tradition of breath control techniques like pranayama. They have come back, and California has very popular yogic practices that are sold as Sikh practices, but they are not. There isn't mention of pranayama or breath control techniques in traditional classic Sikhism. When you breathe, you do Nam Simran. You don't do various varieties of moving your abdomen in a particular way, or breathing from one nostril to the other nostril, All of those things may be very important, but they are not strictly part of Sikhism. So Nam Simran is the Sikh way of doing meditation. Now, meditation in Buddhism is arriving at a conclusion of shunyata. Buddha said everything is dependent upon everything else. It is called dependent origination. In Buddhist belief, if you follow your internal mental working, you reach shunyata, void. Shunya is zero. Incidentally, I don't know how many of you know, Fibonacci, Europeans didn't have zero. And that's why when you write LCM in Roman, there is no zero, 50, 100,000. Fibonacci brought zero to Europe, to Rome, Florence from India in the 14th century. And the Florence authorities banned it. They said it doesn't say in the Bible that there's a zero. This seems like the work of the devil. So zero was banned for a few years in Europe before they realized its value. But Buddhism says inside there's nothing. Hinduism says inside is Satchidanand, the pure spirit that you can get in touch with by focusing on it. Sikhism says you should just repeat the name of God, which is Nam, which each breath, Nam Japo, Nam Tapo, Nam Me Raho Samaye. Say the name, repeat the name, remain in the name. So Sikh Dhyan is, Nam Simran is different from traditional Eastern dhyans of India. Then again, Sikhs have a sense of karma, a belief in karma and the law of karma, that actions have consequences. In Hinduism and Buddhism, good karma leads to salvation. And you get out of the cycle of 8.4 million life forms through good karma. In Sikhism, karma is not enough. You need nadar. And nadar is from the Parsi word nazar, which is gaze. It is a compassionate gaze of God. The Christian equivalent is the grace. You need grace. So, karmi ave kapda nadri mokhtwar. Karma will give you the fabric, but you need nadar to find God. Without God's grace, karma is not enough. So that's again a very important difference. And very, very important, the moksha or liberation from the cycle of birth and death in non-Sikh Indian religions is through karma and bhakti. Nanak says you can find Jivan Mukti in your ordinary living life. You don't have to renounce the world. You don't have to give up on life. Jivan Mukti is possible without giving up life. So you can be liberated while living as a human being. So almost all religions in the world have this concept of divine will. So the Christians have thy will be done. That is hukam. Hukam means the order. Hukme andar sabko bahar, hukam na koi. Everything that happens under the command of God, and nothing is outside of the hukam. So this is common. The other thing that is common in the Indian religions is ego. While the West thinks of ego as the final goal, authentic ego. I am being my, and Americans are very fond of being authentic, and and that authenticity is that I say whatever I like, and whatever I say is my valid truth. In Indian traditions, that is ahankar. Ahankar means aham is I and kar is karna. I am the doer. And the Indian position is that is your problem because you think you are the doer. And so you will not accept what is happening to you. You keep wanting to. And in Sikhism, that's called haume. Haume dirag rog hai, daru bhi ismahi, kirpa kare to japni, ta gur ke shabad kamai. Home, your ego is a chronic suffering, but it is its own cure. Daru bhi is mine. If God does kripa on you and you earn the good name of the Lord, your home is will go. The disease of home will go. In Buddhism, desire is the cause of all suffering. In Hinduism, avidya is the cause of all suffering. In Sikhism, home is the cause of all suffering. And these are different. Again, I'll come to that in the. I'll just keep it time. Okay, I'm okay for time, I think. We started 10 minutes late, so I'm taking liberties. Okay. Then the concept of seva. Seva means service. But this is seva not as doing something to earn good karma. Seva is a form of worship in Sikhism. So serving humanity is serving God. Which dunya save kamaiye, ta dargah baisan pai. You do service within the world, you serve the world, then you sit in the court of the Lord. One of the most amazing things you see if you go to a Sikh Gurdwara, Bangla Sahib, you will see a billionaire. You will not know he's a billionaire. He'll be cleaning shoes. And then he'll sit next to the poorest beggar and they will eat together. Humility and seva. It is absolutely extraordinary, the seva that Sikhs do. And I'll come to that and I'll come to why it's important for us to do that. But it's not seva to do punya. It's not seva for a purpose other than seva, serving humanity. It's almost like the Mother Teresa view that she was, when somebody asked her, why do you do this? She said, I'm serving God. It's the same concept of it. Guru Nanak said it many years before her. All three non-Sikh Indian religions talk of grahest, brahmacharya, 4 stages of life. Again, David, you might be interested in this. Erickson's 7 stages of development comes from Erickson's friendship with a man called Kakkad, who they met at Harvard, MIT, and Kakkad taught him about Gandhi and the 4 stages of Indian life, from which Erickson developed his model. Grahast is the life of the family man. So the other 3 religions ask you to renounce the world, do your family duties. At the age of 50, you take sannyas, you detach, and at the 75, vanvas, you retreat from the forest. And Jains do that. Strict Jains will retreat from the forest and starve themselves to death. Guru Nanak said, no, you stay engaged with the world. Grah mein sada har raho, harsyo lavo ne. Stay in grahast, remember God, keep serving God. There is no renunciation. Sikhs will not renounce. The other interesting thing is Meri Piri, which came from the 6th Guru, who carried 2 swords. So one is your spiritual authority and one is your temporal authority. So the political and the spiritual religious were combined by the 6th Guru. They weren't there at the time of Guru Nanak. Guru Nanak was not interested in power in any case. But once one Sikh started being persecuted, they had to fight back. So the 2 swords, Meri Piri, is an interesting concept because Sikhs, you have to be a sant as well as a soldier. You have to be a saint and a soldier. The term for sword is kirpan. Kirpan comes from kirpa. You can only use a sword as an act of mercy. A Sikh will not attack anyone who is defenseless. Many of you will know the story of Bhai Kanhaiya. Sikhs, not just Sikh, no Sikh religion, no Indian religion has done conversion by sword or by bribing. Just hasn't happened. And the message is stay in the world, fight injustice, change it, but stay in the world, stay engaged. And Guru Nanak gave the 6 words, which I think are, and I'll come back to them: Naam Japu, remember God; Vanchaku, share what you're consuming; Kirat Karo, earn an honest living. Okay, and I'll come back to that. Now, you do this while you stay engaged with the world. After having traveled all corners of the world, wherever I'm told he is the most widely traveled human being at that time, Guru Nanak. He went back and started farming again in his old age. He went back to profit and loss and doing work. He never renounced the world. And Kartarpur is still there, where he set up his farm. So let's come to this really special aspect of Sikhism, which is langar, where everybody sits and eats together. I've made this chart comparing the UN humanitarian system with langar as far as the information I can get. So I haven't taken it from paper. I've Googled, I've asked various sources. The annual budget of the UN system is $36.5 billion. Langar, which is free food that everyone gets in a Gurdwara, is produced entirely by volunteers and donations. Every Gurdwara all over the world will serve a meal. If you're hungry in a new city, try and find a Gurdwara. They will give you food to eat, regardless of who you are, what state you're in, whether you can pay or not. 6 million meals are served every day in Gurdwaras around the world, regardless of need. Many beggars, rickshaw pullers, chaiwala, corner shop people eat in Gurdwaras in Delhi, and they eat sitting next to millionaires. There is no paid work here. UN has 37,000 staff for its humanitarian system. The langar is done entirely voluntarily. There is no bureaucracy. Each Gurdwara sets up its own system. And it's 500 years old. Humanitarian systems are conditional. They come into operation when there's a crisis, there's famine, there's langar is daily, everywhere. I find langar one of the most amazing traditions that Sikhs have all over the world, wherever you go. Mexico City has a Gurdwara. I was surprised to find when I went to Mexico. And they have langar. This comes from the fundamental difference between Sikhism and a lot of other religions. You cannot become a Hindu. You have to be born a Hindu. You become a Buddhist, you can convert to Jainism. But Christianity, Islam, Judaism, you have to have a mother who's a Jew. Christianity and Islam, you have to have rituals. Our ardas ends with Tere Pane Sarbadda Pala. Sikhism has no gender, caste, religious distinction or hierarchy. Not many people know the Harmandir Sahib, the most sacred Sikh site. The foundation stone was laid by a Muslim. Guru Nanak said, all rivers lead to the same ocean. And he said another very beautiful phrase, Suraj eko rut anek. There is only one sun. So what if there are many seasons? The illumination is the same. So we have no concept of the chosen people. And I think you look at the wars in the world, and they are between one tribe of chosen people and another tribe of chosen people. We do not have a concept. We are not the chosen people. And where I find modern young Sikhs becoming more and more militant, I find that a tragedy. They are going absolutely against the teachings of Guru Nanak. So let's come to the mental health bits, and then I'll end. Charadi Kala is, again, I'm writing a paper on this. If any one of you cites any of this, you have to attribute it to me. Don't take my ideas just yet. You may have thought about all of this. This is not original. It's just that I've thought of it for the first time, so I think I'm the only one who's thought of it. I'm sure you You all know about this more than I. Chardi Kala strictly means spirit in ascension, rising spirit, eternal optimism. Sikhs have had their fair share of persecution. The Jews have had, so have the Sikhs. Not at the scale of the Jews, which is not that old, and it's not that large a population ever. We now have something called positive psychology, started at Martin Seligman, and now lots and lots of people are now saying, why should psychology always look at suffering, human suffering? What about human flourishing? So here I've tried to look at the commonalities between this modern psychology, positive psychology movement and Chardi Kala and where they are different. They both focus on joy and flourishing, on resilience, right? And that if you are suffering, you can grow from that, right? Gratitude is in both positive psychology and Chardi Kala. Community, belonging, meaning, meaning. Seligman had the PERMA model, the M in that stands for meaning, right? So that's a common ground. But there are fundamental differences. Positive psychology is rooted in human cognition, is rooted in the self. Chardi Kala is rooted in something larger than the self. It's not rooted in the ego, it's rooted in a higher reality. Positive psychology has techniques, and each one has its own technique. In Chardi Kala, you have to accept, serve, and remember God. You could say these are techniques, but they are not the kind of techniques that you see in positive psychology. The goal is subjective well-being, while in Chardi Kala, it's more than you flourish, but also you get Jivan Mukti. Your suffering ends. The nature of suffering is spiritual in Sikhism, Aume and Mayajal. In positive psychology is cognitive reframing. You've got cognitive distortions, your schema disturbances, your circumstances are poor. Chardi Kala is communal. Although practiced individually, but the idea of Chardi Kala is Sarbadda Pala. When you say Jaikara in a Gurdwara, that is Chardi Kala for everyone. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh is communal. Positive psychology, like all Western psychology models, are primarily individual. And Chardi Kala is unconditional, no matter what your circumstances. Positive psychology is contingent. Oh, you're poor, so it has causal explanations which are social. You've had this bad parenting, abusive childhood, and so that explains it. And let's try and get over that. Chardi Kala doesn't say, has no causal interest. You have to have eternal sense of spirit and ascension, regardless of your circumstances. What have I done? I'm coming to an end. Yeah, I just wanted to. I can't. The literature on meditation and spiritual practice and neuroscience is so huge, I can't do it justice. But I am not asking you to believe that somehow neuroscience proves spirituality, or proves the existence of God, or proves the existence of spirit. What neuroscience is showing is correlations of certain practices with brain change, right? It does not prove that Guru Nanak was right. Okay, it does not prove anything. It's just, and I'm not going to cover all of it because we don't have time, and I'm aware I'm exactly 1 hour point. This man is very interesting. Some of you may know him, Dharam Singh Khalsa. He does very interesting research in Alzheimer's, and he got a group of white Americans really in a dementia home, some with early, some with late stage of dementia, and got them to do Satnam. Satnam means God's name is truth. Very interesting results. I'll let you go and read them for yourself. I think he's still working. And it is this Satnam, just saying, and this is now Andrew Newberg, who's done the most work on contemplation. He has shown that all contemplative techniques have similar neurological effects. So chanting, mala japna, all of them have a positive effect irrespective of the underlying religious belief. So please do not go away from this saying only Sikh believes. Any kind of contemplative practice has benefits on you, including things like yoga. This is general body movement and the effect on blood flow, and you can see that the blood flow increases in several parts of the brain. This is just one study. There are so many of them, and there's systematic review. I saw a recent one, and I also saw a negative one, which challenges this. But this one concluded that meditation induces functional and structural changes in the brain. Our reviews shows that effects are relatively strong for structural changes with consistent changes observed in the right insula. Right? Now, this is not definitive proof of anything other than contemplative practice is good for your sense of well-being. But I think you don't need a lot of science for that. Here is my evidence summary card because I can't cover everything. Naam Simran, I'm using it as a shorthand for all contemplative practice. Andy Newberg is the man who's done the work on this. He has shown both structural and functional changes in the brain from contemplative traditions. Default mode network, which is the internal dialogue that goes on and on and on. Default mode network becomes silent. Telomere studies I find most fascinating. Telomere, for those of you who are not scientists, telomeres are bits in a chromosome which join chromosomes together. The length of a telomere is related to how long you live. Telomere changes occur with meditation, which is extraordinary. And the evidence is strong. Chaddi Kala, the thing about positive psychology, pretty good evidence for that as well, including for post-traumatic growth. So what we call Chaddi Kala or positive psychology calls post-traumatic growth. There is evidence that what we call helpers high, doing good unconditionally for someone. Do it next time. Next time you see someone you're not related to, just give them something. Write a note for someone, put a $5 bill in, leave it somewhere without taking any effort for it and see how you feel. Try it for yourself. It is helpers high. Really makes you feel good about yourself. Giving makes you feel abundant. Wanting makes you feel hungry. So there is a lot of neuroscience of giving. Social connections we know. Now there's social prescribing. Rather to the effect of social connection. The blue zones, the areas where people live for more than 100 years, a large part, they are all, the common thing is not olive oil. It's common thing is sense of community. Communal eating research done by, I'll end with a quote from him. He's a psychologist at University of Oxford. Food security studies. We are doing a big study in Nigeria in schools, and we were going to provide mental health training to kids, but 75% of them come hungry to school. So we are now teaching them how to grow vegetables. Food security, acceptance and commitment therapy is what Hokam is. There are 300 trials of ACT. It is nothing but pana manna, tera pana mitha lage. As is research for compassion, Sarvada Pala, or pro-social activities. And I'm calling it homo reduction, but it is sense of thinking beyond one's individual needs. Thinking beyond what do I need? Ego dissolution. And this is emerging. a very, very nascent field is Nadar. It was very difficult to study. When I was doing this, I was going to do, there are so many concepts of Nadar, grace, even within Hinduism, but then I thought and I don't know that much about it, but it's an emerging field. None of this, again, I'm not trying to convince you that Sikhism is a scientific truth. Please do not go away taking that. I'm telling you that contemplative practices are good for us. Why are they good for us? Because suffering is not just biochemical, right? Biochemistry is the mechanism by which symptoms are produced. Biochemistry is not the cause. Suffering is existential to being human. In fact, all beings suffer. The power of the therapeutic relationship, which we now talk about in therapy, is called the Guru-Chela relationship, which is 10,000 years old. Resilience is not just an individual practice. It needs a community, a purpose, and daily discipline. Langar, Sangat, Seva, Sarabadda Pala. These are all answers to loneliness, alienation, purposelessness. And I think they work. So I'll end with one observation. My observation is this. Anyone who's been to India knows how many beggars there are and how they pester you. I lived in India for 30 years. Now I'm 65. I've made my peace with it. I have had to make my peace with it. You can only have one mother. Even if she's abusive, she's your mother. I can't renounce India and give it up forever. I have never seen a Sikh beggar in my life. Marjana peekhne mani. Sikhs will not beg. That's an extraordinary thing. So this is 500-year-old prescription for human flourishing. Naam japo, ban chako, kirat karo. Thank you very much.
Swaran Preet ji, thank you very, very much. Before I open the thing for questions and answers, I just have of the first question myself. Is your PowerPoint shareable? I'm sure a lot of listeners would love to review your PowerPoint post. I know they can review it on the video, but a PDF version.
May I take out some personal bits and create a PDF and send it to you?
Absolutely. That's fine. You can just send it to me on email and I will send it out later.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
The rest of the seekers, open forum right now. So, Swaranji, if you can stop sharing, then I think we can just open it to Q&A.
Sorry. Yeah. Oops. Oh, what have I done?
We have Lambaji. Go ahead, Lamba sir.
Before that, Nidhi ji had a question in the chat. Then why are we asked to focus on just one? It's so difficult to choose one. So if
sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't understand
at some point she in the presentation she said, Nidhi ji, if you are present, if you could speak up. Please.
Yeah, Sat Shri Akal everyone, and thank you, Dr. Saab, for such a beautiful and informative presentation. It's really a delight to always go through your subject. When you were talking about like the oldest is Sanatan in your presentation, and there at one time you said that so Hindus have so many gods. That confuses me because now we are getting into a concept of choose one. Like even Ekumkar, I'm sure I'm misinterpreting, but there is one. So that confuses me, that how we choose one when we have been grown up worshipping so many.
Yeah. Okay. So I will give you the answer that I have come to understand. I am no authority on any religion. I have come to it very late. most of my life, I was not a religious person. I still am not a practicing Sikh in that way. I'm very interested, and I found personally it has transformed my life. If Adi Shankaracharya, he would say that there is only one Brahman, right? And that is called Nirgun Brahman. And this is also in Sikhism, Nirgun and Sargun. Nirgun Brahman is one and is formless. And our Mool Mantra is about Nirgun Brahman. Akal Purak Ajuni Sahib Gur Prasad. He was not born, he was not created, he is not bound by time. That is Nirgun Brahman. Sargun Brahman is Brahman, so that is transcendent. Sargun Brahman is immanent, Brahman that appears in the world. And in Hinduism, everything that appears in the world is a manifestation of Brahman. And so you can worship a monkey and you can worship an elephant. So there are stories behind worshipping all of them, but these are not in conflict. Now, I think the wisdom of Hinduism was to realize that abstract concepts of Brahman and underlying reality may not work for everyone. And a personal, individual relationship with a statue or a mantra works for most people. That's my understanding. I see no conflict. I see absolutely no conflict between having polytheism in that God will manifest himself or herself or itself in many ways. And so in India, families have their own god and goddess. A family will have a unique, Ramanujam, the mathematician. Their family had a unique goddess. And Ramanujam believed that the theorems that came to him while he was sleeping were put under his bed, into his head from the pillow by the goddess. And that goddess you may never have heard about. So choose one because you need a symbolic representation. And those Ganesh and Buddha and to me, they seem to be a Sargun representation of the same Nirgun Brahman. Now, I'm very happy to be told I'm wrong, but that is my understanding.
Thank you.
Fascinating. Nidhi ji, very good question. And before we go to others, if I can jump in. First of all, what a fantastic presentation, Dr. Saab. I loved every bit of it. I don't necessarily agree with everything, but I found it fascinating and I learned a lot. I do think this is a question that came up in yesterday's Purpose of Life meditation as well. You know, why do we, even in Sikhi, why choose one when you have all these? And here's Guru Nanak's answer, here's Kabir's answer. Hum tum beech bhayo nahi koi, tumhe sokant nar hum soi, कहत Kabir suno re loi, ab tumri partit na hoi. So the point is, for contemplative medicine to work, you need to be less confused. And the more you can focus on one thing, whether it is a story, an idol, or a Shabad. Remember, yesterday someone came and we said, oh, this is your Shabad Guru. And she said, oh, I have so many gurus. I was like, no, from now, for the next week, you cannot even consider other Shabads to be your Guru. These 4 lines are going to be your Guru and you're going to contemplate on them. If you cannot stay on one thing, you cannot do contemplative medicine. So I think that's the reason for the one thing is so you can focus.
I entirely agree, and I do not believe that any one particular mantra or one particular jap, Satnam ko ekokar karo ya Om Mane Padma ho kaho, it is the question of repeating the same word with a sense of devotion, that bhakti part.
With bhav.
Because Nanak and Kabir come from the bhakti
man rakhiye bhav. If you do the 3 things with everything.
Exactly. And so if you take modern philosopher, psychiatrist Martin Buber, he had that concept of I, thou. He said everything is relational, me and you. And so you need a relationship on which to focus. And this creates a relationship.
Yeah. Well, sorry for jumping, but I know
No, that's all.
David's waiting. Let's go to David and then Nandini.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I would like to firstly, that was an absolutely encyclopedic presentation. Thank you very much indeed, and it could indeed run into several volumes. And I do hope that these slides are made available. I would actually like to come back to the very beginning and do a little bit of a gap analysis. I appreciate with such an encyclopedic presentation, the last thing anyone wants is a gap. But one thing that struck me is if we just think about for a second broadly human behavior, one of the strongest behavioral associations around is between religion and politics. If you look right throughout history, we find that religion is very closely related to political activity. Again, Sikhism had a very successful empire for a while until the British came along, the way we do. And yet when you look at the philosophy of religion, as you segued from that into part two, and you look at the philosophy of politics, and your example of Delhi is a really interesting one, because my understanding of that bit of history, stop me if I've got this wrong, is that it started because the Congress Party tried to engineer a division between two wings of Sikhism, and they then made a complete mess of it, and a disaster then ensued. And yet, when you look at attempts for religion to engage in politics, or politics to engage with religion, there's a huge gap. They don't discuss each other, even though the overlap is there.
So David, just a minor correction. Congress Party didn't engineer a division between two different versions of Sikhism. They tried to create a rival to Akali Dal, which was a Sikh political force, by bringing up this relatively unknown man and making a political counterforce. So it wasn't a division in Sikhism. It was creating a rival political party or political force. I make a fundamental distinction between religion and spirituality. Religion will, the moment someone has control, they will abuse that, right? Religion gives you control, politics gives you control, wealth gives you control. So I think that my interest is more in the spirituality bit. And if you start going down that road, Julian of Norwich, St. Augustine, Thomas St. Aquinas, right? Sufi poets, Rumi, Guru Nanak, Bulle Shah. People spread geographically and in time across thousands of years have all written and come to the same conclusion. There is one reality. We are all part of that same light. And hence the fact that so many people from so many different traditions come to the same spiritual understanding, to me gives some veracity to that understanding. And the best description of that, till I write my book, which will be the best, is the book Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley brings it all together. And he was a great student of Vedanta. Or the book by Richard Burke, I don't know if you know Cosmic Consciousness. So So I take entirely your point about religion and politics being used together. They've always been together, and they probably will continue to be together. Even now in India, religion and politics are very intertwined, as they are in parts of America. But that is religion as a way of social control. I was trying not to go down that road because I have seen the horrors committed in the name of religion. I told you one, I've seen others. I worked in a number of conflict zones now, and what people do in the name of religion, and each one of them has God on their side. There's a Bob Dylan song with God on their side. So I agree with you, but my focus was less on religion and more on the contemplative practices within that religion. You read Confessions by St. Augustine, it could have been written by Kabir. St. Augustine says, whatever I do for you, God. Someone asked Kabir was Julaha, he was a weaver. He says, if you're so interested in God, why are you weaving? He said, I'm weaving because I'm weaving for God. Everything I do is part of what God is. So those Anal Haq, the guy who, what was his name? Mansoor. Mansoor was an Iranian student of I forget my age. He came to a realization that there is only one God, and that God is the same as the light within him. So the same light that is God, he is part of that light. So he went running to his master's house and knocked on the door, and the master said, "Who is it?" And Mansoor said, "Ana al-Haq, I am the truth." And for that, he was tortured and killed. He would not give that up, because in Islam, saying you are the truth rather than Muhammad is a blasphemy. So religion and politics is a different thing. I think the mystical, contemplative bits of most religions are closer together than people would like to admit, because we all want to be chosen, and we want to be the chosen people.
Thank you, Swaranji. Thank you, Swaranji. So, keeping in time in mind, we have one question from Nandini, and then I have one online. So, Nandini, please go ahead.
I'll stick to one question out of the many questions I had put through. So, Swaranji, thank you so much for that. I'll be short. Is joy possible without suffering at all? And I ask because suffering is existential to being human. So I'm reflecting that if we didn't have dark, we wouldn't know what light is. Yep. Without suffering, would we ever know what joy is? And in that case, why do we always, as humans, strive to eliminate suffering completely?
Why we try and eliminate suffering? Because it makes us suffer. I'm not being facetious, but in the various traditions describe the causes of suffering slightly differently. So in Sikhism, there are five qualities or attributes: Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar. Kam is lust, Krodh is anger, Lobh is greed, Moh is attachment, and Ahankar is pride or ego. So these five make you suffer. In Buddhism, desire is the root of suffering, because desire can never be fulfilled. You're hungry, you eat, you'll become hungry again. All attempts to fulfill desire are ephemeral. They will not last. And so suffering is absolutely essential to human condition. My child gets a cold, I can't sleep at night. I suffer. And that's why we've survived as a species. Suffering is very much part of human existence. The way I've started looking at it is that once you accept that suffering is part of the human condition, then you can do what Adi Shankaracharya calls vivek, which is discerning and detaching. My ankle hurts. I had a motorcycle accident many years ago. My ankle is very badly deformed. My right leg is short. It hurts all the time, right? I can say I'm in pain, or I can say my ankle is in pain. The second detaches me from the pain. And you can say that I've started doing it with my patients, and it works. I say, look, you are depressed. You've got bad feelings, but you are not your bad feelings. And that once you can detach yourself from your suffering, then you can flourish despite suffering. We should not try and eliminate suffering. We should try and rise above it and say, despite suffering, we can flourish. Despite suffering, we can accept. Despite suffering, we can say, maybe there's meaning in it. Have you read A Man's Search for Meaning by
No.
Viktor Frankl? Okay.
Victor Frankl, yeah.
Important point that because it relates directly to your question. Viktor Frankl was a Viennese psychiatrist of Jewish origin who was in a concentration camp. He also spent time in Auschwitz. He was released from Auschwitz. Also, he had previously been to other concentration camps, and he's got a book called Man's Search for Meaning. So he saw a lot of people around him die, but he survived. So following release from Auschwitz, he started thinking, well, why did some of us survive? And he came to the conclusion that people in the camps who could make sense of their suffering, whichever way they made sense, maybe I've sinned against God, maybe or past karma. If you could find meaning in your suffering, you could transcend it. It's learned helplessness that kills you.
Okay.
So suffering is, we are not good, and suffering is necessary. We would. Pain is necessary, or you'll burn. If you don't feel pain, lepers lose their fingertips because they don't feel pain. Pain and suffering are essential for survival. For flourishing, you don't need to eliminate suffering as much as rise above it. That's my view. And instead, in case you think I've done it and I've kind of attained some kind of nirvana, I'm full of flaws. I'm as fallen as any other human being.
With Prernaji and Bharatji, a purpose of life contemplations with me, and so I hope you will continue to join us. Thank you again, Dr. Saab. We'll stop the recording here, but for those of us who want to hang out afterwards, please stay back. And Dr. Saab, if you can stay for just a few minutes, we can figure out the timing. So thank you again, and what a